maybe taking a step back, you know, location and terrain is one part of it, right? But ultimately you're there for a particular purpose. You know, you're there for a species, you're there for a trophy, maybe you're there for meat, you know, you're there for a reason. Now for me, I love to go into, you know, traditionally historic areas that people, you know, like Bruce Banwell's a famous New Zealand author, writes about some traditional Otago and Rakaia strain. You know, those areas intrigue me and draw me and inspire me as a hunter to want to check out. Gordon Atkinson's book, you know, Gordon Atkinson was renowned for going into the Whitcomb and taking out some incredible specimens from the Whitcomb in the 50s, before sort of culling really took its place. Aerial culling, I should say, they were foot culling at the time. And Percy Liza's book, I don't have that actually in my library here, but I've read that a few times when I was at university. The Tales of Percy Liza, for anyone that is into hunting should read that book. That's the book that makes me think big and dream big. There's been hard Kiwis pushed their boundaries and, you know, achieved things that others at that time weren't achieving, and that's, you know, that's really motivating. I love reading stories like that. I love reading about other people's successes, and I'm just going to throw it out here now. You know, Arash Tahan, young aspiring hunter from New Zealand, the South Island, about to embark on 18 months of hunting around all parts of the South Island. I couldn't be more proud and interested in what that individual is going to achieve in his 18 months. Being able to read about and see others' journeys is excellent. You know, that you can take away information and learn and progress and improve on yourself as a hunter and as a person in general. So, you know, reading about traditional areas and learning about their terrain.
How did you got that book?
It's a great book. You should read it one day. It's about hunting really big stags, hunting Rakaia strain stags. Is it me? Do you think it looks like me? Yeah. I'd be pretty happy to be that guy. And then you can assess the terrain. You look at some of the quality heads. Generally speaking, quality areas will continue to produce quality animals, and so, you know, don't overlook what's been written about in the past. There's some great hunting stories in New Zealand captured in books, and you know, I really encourage reading as many of them as you can, jotting down notes, keeping a notepad. I mean, this is an old notebook that I kept from the age of 15, 16 years old. It's got all my hunting stories when I was at school in them. I'll show you a couple quickly, but keeping records is important. You know, it's for some people, there's so many catchments that you hunt in a year, you need a notebook to help you do that. Plus, you know, with a notebook you can keep track of all specific details, like, you know, with all of these interesting facts, like, you know, what elevation I saw the deer at, what catchment was I in, what time of the year was it, you know, how many animals did I shoot. In fact, I won't show it to you in too much detail because you'll start to see the areas I hunt, but you know, was it polecat forest, was it beech forest, was it morning, was it evening, what time of the day it was it, you know, a yearling, a hind, a red stag, whatever. Like, I kept as much information as I could. Animal, year, season, area, location, time, was it a trophy or not, number of points, terrain, altitude, calibre, distance, mates that I was with, where did I shoot it, you know, that's the sort of information I kept as a kid. And look, I look back on it now and it's all part of my knowledge base. I've got a database in my mind, and, you know, if I start to go senile, I should write that stuff down. You know, to encourage, write stuff down. It's a good way to share the knowledge with others, and maybe my kids will look at it later, or maybe they won't. So I've just gone through the book and I wrote down all of these different valleys where I really liked the symmetry or the shape or the length of a particular animal that was in there. And it's interesting to see what the themes are in terms of the different catchments that keep popping up with amazing heads. And, you know, that's my style of research, is I just start to narrow down different areas that I want to look at, and you can see some of the little red dots that I'm putting on, you know, that there's some great heads that have come out historically that could potentially throw up a ripper, and that's a great way of using your time to plan your hunt. This book is one of the most insightful books for a young aspiring hunter to learn about deer, chamois, and to some extent tahr habits. It's stalking the seasons round, by Roger Lentil and Frank Saxton. I got this book when I was about 15 years old, and I still read it today, and you still get more useful insight from it. So that's a really good book. Make sure you grab a copy of that or find it at a library, check it out and have a read. And by the same author, Roger Lentil and Frank Saxton put together this alpine hunting in New Zealand, and it's a more detailed insight. Hold on, darling. More detailed insight into chamois and tahr hunting in New Zealand. Magazines, these are a great source of information. Magazines are full of intel. Lots of people have put in heaps of time to find an area. They won't necessarily share their areas, but magazines are full of great information about how you can adequately plan your hunts. So I think I've gone way off on a tangent here. Coming back to location selection, the things that I think about are what is it that I want to hunt, the terrain that I want to hunt them in, what the weather's doing, and I've written about this in articles for New Zealand Hunter years ago, is about camp selection. And I try to put camp as close to an area that's productive for hunting, or I think is going to be productive for hunting, but I'll usually put it on the side of the ridge system that I'm not planning to hunt. So I'll camp, if this is a hill, this is a hill here, and I want to hunt this side of the hill that's on your side. I'll approach with the wind in my face, so the wind's coming in my face. I'm, prevailing winds here. All great, I'm heading into the wind. I'll camp on this side, I'm camping right here on the ridge top, just off the edge of the main ridge, so any wind that sinks in the night time when those katabatic winds change are going to come down into this catchment that I don't really care about. I'm not planning to hunt there. And then I'll pop over into this catchment. It's only 15 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour, who knows, but the point is you just pop up and over into the catchment you want to hunt, and there you are, voila, already there. You can stay there until last light, and it's just a quick pop over the ridge to camp. That's how I hunt. In every situation that I can, I'll always put camp not too far away from the area that I want to hunt. And I'm very mindful that if camp is scenting an area, that's not where I'll put camp. And if it means camping in a shithole, so be it, that's where I'll camp. So camp selection is really important, and looking at whether you've got flat terrain to camp in, again, important, and you can gauge that by looking at Google Earth on the 3D layers. You can get it from Topo Maps to some extent. Otherwise you're just going to have to suck it and see on the day, and a degree of flexibility while hunting you just have to have. You have to have your area pre-planned, but when you get there, be flexible. Maybe there's no sign in the area that you thought there was going to be sign, maybe the animals aren't there. Well, be flexible, pack up camp, move on. Apply the same logic but move to a different area. Another aspect of planning, and I won't labour on it too much because it's a topic in its own, but understand your rifle, understand your calibre, understand your reload or your projectile selection, your trajectory, your velocity, your energy at impact. Understand all that stuff and put it into a simple table. While on the laminate your maps too. Whether there's hunting pressure in the area is fundamental to know. Whether there's been 1080 dropped in your area, whether there's been wild animal recovery operations in your area, waro, or even heli hunting in your area, or even how much hunting pressure your area gets, are all really important factors in helping me anyway select where I want to go. The Department of Conservation website has got good disclosure now on 1080 that they're planning to drop. It's a bloody shame, there's so much of it that gets dropped that it makes finding the ideal hunting areas harder and harder these days. Another way of looking at 1080'd areas is that the waro, the wild animal recovery helicopter guys, can't shoot in those areas. So if there are deer, and in particular stags, older stags that have survived or managed to avoid 1080 in those areas, then at least you don't have the waro competing equally against you. Also take into account rivers. Rivers, lakes, you'll need to know whether you can cross rivers in periods of high rainfall. New Zealand is renowned for having high rainfall. Victorian Alps are also renowned for having rainfall in certain times of the year. Understand those rivers and plan your hunt around those. You know, look at the Environment Canterbury website for New Zealand South Island, and see what the river levels are doing. Understand what the amount of cubic metres per second are to allow you to four-wheel drive across, you know, a particular area. I think the Rakaia, from memory, if it's over 250 cubic metres per second, I think that's when I would, you know, call it quits on trying to get across the Rakaia. The Rangitata, I think it was 150 cubic metres per second before I would call it quits going across those major catchments. Understanding that's important. And I didn't cover this in my equipment spiel the other week, but I take an EPIRB always, and I actually videoed it, I just forgot to edit it in. So taking an EPIRB and letting your family and loved ones and close mates know where you're going and what your hunting plans are, so that they're there for you to have your back if something goes wrong or you haven't been able to contact them for a number of days or past a particular schedule point. And you should also, if you've got an EPIRB, update it on the website. You can usually register them. I know that you can here in Australia. You put your name, your phone number, your next of kin, contact details, because if you press that button and it comes up with Jamie Carl, he's put his EPIRB on, I want those guys to know exactly where I am and what I'm doing. It might save your life. Might be a snake bite. You've got less than an hour or hours for a snake bite in Australia. You know, you don't want to waste time. Another aspect that I take into account when planning a trip, and this is particularly relevant to Samba now, is I really look at the moon phases, and I'll try and pick a waning moon, so coming off of basically a half moon down to a new moon is a great time that I'll pick to go for a hunt, and the deer are getting more and more active as that new moon approaches. And if I can pick that new moon to coincide with a perigee, which is where the moon is closest to the earth, so that's basically, you don't see anything in the sky but the earth and the moon are as close as they can be for that particular month, that's great. Another element that's certainly less relevant to New Zealand but very relevant to Australia is fires. You know, pick areas that have had fires burn through in the previous year and benefit from that new flourishing growth from that, you know, that black, rich, carbon affected soil. It's a black, you know, life springboks, basically, just things just busting out of black stumps, black soil, scorched earth. You know, it's tragic that the fires rip through, but it's part of Australia's natural ecosystem, and it does thrive on that. So if you can find burnt out areas, that's going to allow you to glass using your binoculars across onto opposite faces and pick out deer that are maybe coming through and picking up that first lot of growth after the bush fire seasons rip through, that can be quite beneficial. You know, walking through an area that's been burnt out is easy going too, so if you're relatively new to hunting and you don't want to get too caught up in the thick stuff, find areas that have been previously burned. Equally important, avoid areas that were burnt sort of 5 years or more ago. I hunt in a few areas that were burnt out back in 2006, and that's as thick as hell. I like that though. That's sort of that doesn't deter me. It just, to be honest, it makes it harder for anybody to get deer in there, and I just hope that there's some deer in there with age. I'm hoping that this little spiel on planning your backpack hunting trips is useful. And if there's stuff I've missed, and there will be stuff I've missed, you know, it's something that can be picked up in future. And happy for people to provide comments and give me insight into the ways you do it. Everyone's got a different approach, and you know, through sharing those approaches we learn and improve. Thanks for watching, and to all my subscribers, I haven't done a shout out yet and I should. Thank you for subscribing, and I hope there's many more to come.